Hey everyone, welcome to In the Future with Spencer and Max. And yes, it's that time again. It's the end of the year. Last episode we did the Christmas special, but now we are getting ready to look into the next year, 2024, and let's see what it might hold. And of course, we're going to do a couple of predictions. Max has five of them. And these five potential game changers for 2024 are something that we're going to dig into. And they touch on different topics, right, Max? I actually haven't seen them yet, but I'm sure they touch on some of the
Total
topics.
surprise.
They must touch on some of the topics we've discussed in the past, though.
A little.
Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and kick it off. Let's have some fun.
Awesome. All right. Five predictions for 2024. It'll be interesting at the end of 2024 to look back on these and just see, how far did we come on some of these? Were they completely off base? I think most of these will come true. If not, they're already in progress. Then the question becomes, how much do they spike in the following year? Okay, let's kick it off. Number one prediction, or let me do it in reverse order.
Oh, okay. Number five.
Number,
Well, are you ranking these?
I'm not ranking these, but I thought it would
Okay.
just be interesting to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so in no particular order, but these are all really interesting. So first prediction for 2024. I think that, well, let me paint a different picture for you. So I'm sure you've noticed over the last year, there's been a huge rise in the number of people who on LinkedIn post, hey, I just completed my UX certificate, or I just completed my certificate in AI. I think that, first of all, the completion of those online certifications are definitely going to continue to steadily rise. But I also think that the pride associated with with those achievements, with achieving those certificates, is also going to
Go up.
go up as well. LinkedIn is just one of the platforms where people just really proudly post about them because it's so closely tied to your resume, and people just want to stand out. They want to be elevated as candidates when they're applying for jobs. So I think that one's, we're already seeing some sprinklings of it, but it's definitely going to continue rising. Um, Part of the reason for this is, actually, you know what? Why don't we just link to the college episode that we recorded
Okay.
previously? Because we cover a lot of the reasons, the backstory for why people are declining in their pursuit of bachelor degrees, and as a result, they're actually targeting more of these online certificates. And I'll just like tease it a little bit. One of the main reasons for this is a the cost of a traditional college education has really elevated, while the return on that investment has significantly dropped, and people are just not really seeing the same value of continuing that 4-year education.
Yep.
Employers are going to value certificates much more than a bachelor degree, because a certificate tells me that, hey, Spencer knows these specific skills in UX or specific skills in AI or data analytics, any of those, whereas a traditional bachelor degree just tells me you had the patience to complete 4 years of schooling, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's number one. I think
Okay.
that that one that one's really strong and will only continue to rise.
Yeah.
Another, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say no, I just agree. Unless you had another point, but I was gonna say yeah. I mean that to me is we like just like in our college episode. College degree was the golden ticket to that career nirvana. And now this thing is just so accessible, so affordable, so tailor made. Especially I think in my industry, your industry, industries where obviously it's not going to replace like a plumbing certification or like a doctor degree, a medical degree or anything like that. But I think in the environment of business, absolutely, I agree with you. I think we're going to see an explosion of this trend continue. I think we're going to see companies that are massive also start to create their own certification programs. Like the IBM, Microsoft already doing it. Salesforce is already doing it where I work.
Hmm.
Um, we're gonna see. I can only imagine the like what's it called? Other corporations like banking corporation, any type of large corporation is going to make their own tract. And as a matter of fact, I work a little bit with the educational, like in my job, we work with some of the educational, what do they call it? Like there's a name for this particular industry, but essentially what they do is that they try to recruit students to the colleges, and what a lot of colleges are doing is trying to move their courses online so that you can subscribe. I think we actually may have talked about this already.
We did.
You're subscribed and you're learning from that college forever. You're just like you're subscribed to that college, so you're always learning. And like, to be honest, like, think about it. Like, how many people, we gotta admit, there's a certain dopamine that comes from for people from adding certified X on your LinkedIn profile. And that dopamine is the same dopamine kick you get when people like your posts, or the same dopamine when people when you discover something new on TikTok. So absolutely, man, I totally agree, and we're gonna get swept away by the certification tide. I got them. Look at my title on my LinkedIn page. But I will say, before we get totally swept, not all certificates are going to be made equal, and there is a risk. Again, this is for a deeper dive, but there's a risk of credential inflation when everybody's just getting the same certificates. And then, so how much value are those certs going to have, right? But I think we're far away from that. I think that's a 2026 issue. But I think for you, 2024, we're in the beginning of the cycle, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, it's also that's a good point about calling it inflation. I would counter argue that it's still the value of that candidate, right? It's going to be those certifications, but it's also going to be, what are your soft skills, right? Just like when you're interviewing somebody today, you're not just looking at, hey, this person came from this college. You're looking at what's their previous job experience. Yeah. You're looking at what are their soft skills, what's their personality, how do they come off, do they ask interesting questions? So, but I do think that certificates are just fundamentally more valuable because you have that inherent value already built in. And it almost goes back to, the days of the past where you had an apprenticeship where you learned hands-on skills, to be a blacksmith or to be a painter or whatever.
Yep.
And so we're sort of coming back to that time, and it's really cool. You made another very interesting point, which I fully agree with. A 4-year, and it's about the dopamine. We are a culture that loves instant gratification, right? And even though, and so a 4-year degree it's a long track, right? You have 4 years before you get that diploma, before you get that, let's call it a dopamine hit. These little certificates are like little milestones, right? It takes you, like the IBM's. I think I'm actually taking an IBM one now. It's like the ethics of artificial intelligence or something like that. Yeah. And that one's like 10 days, right? And so within 10 days, you cover all these different tracks, which are, it's like hit after hit after hit. Very cool. Okay, ready for number 2?
All right, let's do it. Yeah, let's do number 2.
Okay. Prediction for 2024. I actually think that this one will be a consequence of the first one that we just talked about. And what I believe we're going to see is homeschooling will be on the rise. I think it's already happening in the background. I think it's a little bit of a privileged situation, right? Because homeschooling is actually very, it's expensive, right? Like if you compare that to public school, think about the things that parents don't pay for now. You don't pay for a public school education. You could argue you do with taxes, but for the most part, food throughout the day, right? Like that lunch program, that breakfast program, that's a big help to parents, especially in poorer communities. So, and then also like who's actually going to educate this child during the homeschool? A lot of parents are not teachers, right? They don't even know how to approach that topic. And so you're going to have to hire a tutor. Tutors go from $20 an hour to $50 an hour to $100 an hour. So it really is sort of like that privileged bubble, which we can unpack in a separate episode because I think it's a fascinating topic. But I do think that homeschooling will be a consequence of people not pursuing the traditional bachelor degrees. And so, like even leading up to college, where are they being educated? I also think that I'm just gonna make a couple of points here. I also think that what we haven't really seen historically is this growing distrust and really dissatisfaction with our public school system. It's very politically divided now, where people are, some people are just not happy with what's being taught, right? Like there's a lot of I don't really want to get into the political side of it, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of
so,
just topics that different sides of the spectrum just don't agree on, right? And they don't want
totally.
their children to be infected by these things, right?
Hmm.
And another one that's fascinating to me is something that sociologists have predicted for a long time, and that's these helicopter parents, right? You had the previous
This,
generation, which is like actually our generation, of kids who everybody got a gold star. You know, no matter what place you came in, it's like, good job, Johnny. You know, you did fantastic, regardless
hmm,
if you sucked and you came in last place.
right.
Those kids, us now, are becoming parents, and you see the consequence of that really on college campuses where parents are now saying we need to fire this professor because he gave my kid a D in organic chemistry. Well, your son, you know, might be an idiot, and that's why he got a D in organic chemistry. Like
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody yesterday. And organic chemistry is, I'm just using it as an example, but it's one of
Hmm.
those topics that is if you don't pass it, you don't become a doctor. So like,
Right,
and if you do pass it, you need to pass it really, really well to become a strong doctor who's going to save people's lives.
right.
And so what else did I write here? Yeah, so those are kind of the main reasons why I think that homeschooling will continue to be on the rise. What I'm most excited about is obviously there's a lot of negatives, but there's some really
Totally, yeah.
interesting advantages of homeschooling. For example, I'm sorry, there's a lot of there's multiple advantages of homeschooling. There's also very interesting business opportunities in that space. So
Hmm.
I'll just list off one of the main advantages that comes to mind for me is um, our educational system before college and also secondary education. It really teaches Americans how to become good employees,
Yeah.
right? How to work for somebody really well, how to make a lot of money doing that. It does not teach us how to become entrepreneurs, right? It doesn't,
At
because
all. Yeah.
yeah, we don't have those like hands-on projects that you can do, and these are things that can be really done well in a homeschool environment.
Right.
Some of the obvious disadvantages are you're kind of missing that social aspect, right? You're not hanging
Big
out with
one.
kids your age when you're
Yeah.
in that, especially during that age where you're being molded to become the person that you're going to be. That is
Yeah.
such a big part of it. Now think about some of the business opportunities, right? Let's say to the lacking social aspect, online communities are going to develop. You're going to see websites that are going to start selling curriculums that you can kind of customize for the child you want your for the adult you want your child to
Yeah.
become. Really cool stuff. Books are really expensive, right? So these online communities can create like hand-me-down books. You want to shape your child's culture. You know, now that you have, let's say, 100,000 people in this online community, is it cheaper for everyone to get access to all of the different museums in New York City, right? Like, there's so many different things, just like opportunities, advantages that are going to become as a result of this. Very pumped about it. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I would say this one hits close to home. Yeah, and I'm with you. I absolutely. It's something I noticed even recently. I'm surprised you brought this up because I don't think we discussed this.
Hmm.
No, right? Okay. So I was watching a YouTube video the other day. I may have sent it to you. Oh yeah, I sent it to you actually. It was the one where it was like, I was like, oh look at these alpha gen kids in New
You
York.
did, you did, yeah.
So as one of the things the kid says, he says they're like, "Oh, do you go to school?" And clearly, these kids are somewhat privileged. Maybe I'm making a big assumption, but it just gave me that energy. And the kid goes, "Nah, I don't go to school anymore. That's trash, man. I'm homeschooled now." And I was like, "Hmm." And he goes, "Yeah, it's like I tried to go to school a few years ago. But that was trash. So just get homeschooled now." And I was like, "Whoa, okay." And I think both him and his friend get homeschooled. These kids from Brooklyn that obviously their parents make good money. And I was like, "That's interesting." Um,
How
so
old are
I
they? I think it's an important point. How
they
old do you
were
think they are?
10 or 11. They're 12, 11 and 12. From 10 to 12, that's their age.
Very important point, right? Like that's the mindset of that child now.
Right, right. Well, the fact that he said school is trash.
Yes.
Like he basically was, yeah. And I don't think it was because he said learning sucks. I think he was just saying, oh, like the environment, this place just is not a great place. Like I don't want to go to that. Like probably the same way you would feel about going to like a bad hospital.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll
No, no,
just I'll just make a little caveat there. So like these kids are, I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but these kids are influencers, right? And so
yeah,
their world is not necessarily in school; it's more online, right?
online. Yep.
They have like a million followers. That's kind of where their world actually is. That's where they want to hang out. So anything else in the real world is trash, right?
Totally, totally, and that's a great point too. And I think, and additionally for the parents, like you said, helicopter parents, I agree. Traditional parent, pandemic anxieties, schools going bad, education being defunded, as we hear a lot of, there is a movement from the conservative side to some extent to defund public education. Right, that's not me taking a political stance. I'm just saying that that's like a known thing, right? Versus maybe the Democrats are. I don't know if they're trying to invest more in public education. Maybe they are. I think they are. Um, so they have that level. So I think people overall, there's like this kind of stalemate that if you can afford it, you're just kind of like, nah, I'm not even gonna I'm not gonna take a half baked schooling, a half baked schooling environment for my kid, but I also don't want to put them in a religious private school either, right? And then the elite private schools are just so expensive; it's not worth the investment. We have all the content we need, digitally. So I absolutely agree with the homeschooling, man, and it's crazy to think we're moving into that world. But like you said, it's definitely a privilege thing, right? It's resources, time. You need financial cushion to be able to take a role as a parent to help school full time. And obviously the thing that scares me a little bit about that is what I'm about to say might remedy it, but the lack of the social aspect of it, right? Like you're going to lean into virtual communities, AI tutors, but you're not going to interact with other kids your age, which for in some cases like could be a positive and a negative, right? Because when you think about, let me know, I'm trying not to go on a tangent here. What I'm trying to get to is I've made some lifelong friends at school, right? And I think, but maybe some of the ways that'll be remedied is by having a third place. And the third place concept? Yeah.
No.
So the third place concept is like a third place outside from home and school or home and work for somebody. So a cafe. In this kid, it could be a soccer team, a karate class, swimming, piano. So maybe those extracurricular activities are less overwhelming because you're home most of the day, and when you go out, you meet new friends in those extracurricular
Yeah,
activities.
exactly. I totally agree with you. Like a hangout
I,
place.
I hang out play. Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's a board game cafe. Like maybe that's where kids will make more of their friends besides their online friends in the parks and stuff like that. And we drive more of that. The only other thing I was going to mention that the last thing is my last point is I said it could be a positive that they're not around a bunch of kids. If you think about it, and I know this might be controversial, we all grew up as teenagers. When you put a bunch of young, especially boys, together that are above the age of 13, have gone through puberty and basically have basically physically men, but mentally kids, and don't have a passion or a hobby or anything to really relate, typically there's a lot of negativity that comes from those environments. You get a bunch of kids together who not into sports or not into any passion or hobby. They're gonna look for, typically they look for, it's just our instinct. How can we push limits? Just like when we're kids. What are the malicious things we can do? I know people will give me, crap for that, but it's just true. Put a bunch of boys together, a bunch of men together with no passion or hobbies or focus, they will look for trouble. And I think
What is that? What is that tied to? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, it ties in because when you have a bunch of young boys in school, I keep saying the same thing could be the same for girls, but when you have a bunch of boys going to a school that is half baked, doesn't really care about them on an individual level, maybe overcrowded, those boys are basically free to go ahead and get together, create their crews, their gangs, or whatever they have to do, and go cause a ruckus. When they're homeschooled, they're focused, they're guided, they're focused, and they don't have time to, not that they don't have time to, they can be bored, but they're not grouping up together after school to go cause ruckus, to go rob a place, to go fight each other, to go push each other, to bully each other. They're home, they're focused on their education, and they're happy to get out of their house to go swimming or do whatever third place thing they're gonna do. That's all I'm saying. Like like it's kind of like this niche aspect of it, but I think it's one that sometimes gets ignored. Like kids are just bad. Honestly, young adults that are like between the ages of teenagers, they can be bad. So if you get them homeschooled, you kind of that's another topic we'll get into. I would like to explore that topic because my belief to tie it to that point, it was just going to say it in the future, and then we could go to the next one. But is that I think once kids, especially boys, reach a certain age, and they basically look like they're mini adults physically, I think they should be treated as adults sooner than later than we do now.
Interesting. You said something that I was going to prod. I forgot now.
Grouping with no passion, grouping together after
Oh,
school.
I got it. I was gonna, yeah, I got it. What I was gonna ask was, what are your thoughts on, and just briefly because we gotta move on to the next one. What are your thoughts on? Because you kept saying boys, in this one class. But what are your thoughts on like private schools that are gender specific, like boys in all boys school, girls in all girls school, especially in that age, and the lack of diversity, right? Like in gender, and also just like the inherent nature of private school, you kind of lack diversity in it's like a lot of like, especially if it's a religious based school, you have a lot of that particular person, that same mindset. What are your thoughts on that compared to public school?
Yeah, I think you're gonna get the same level of rowdiness, right? Like you're still, and even more because it's almost like you're suppressing any engagement and interactions with the opposite, or either the opposite gender or just anybody who's different from you. So there's this tribal mentality, just a bunch of boys together. Oh, like they start. It's just easier to objectify women or girls when they're not around you, right? Because you dehumanize them. They're not your peers, right? They're not your peers anymore because they're not in your classes. I know the intent is to have people focus on their studies, but you no longer see women as your peers because they're not in your environment. They're just out and about, and you have to go out of school to go see them and engage with them. So I'm not really a fan of that either. And same for girls. Like it's the similar impact, but the opposite, right?
It's interesting. It does become a very us versus them kind of mentality. I loved public school, man.
Me too.
It was such a good time, especially growing up in Queens, which is just like the melting pot of the world, where we have like 200 different cultures all living in Queens, which is insane. Or not cultures, just languages being spoken in Queens. So one of those, it was just some astounding number.
It was fun. I agree with the same.
Yeah, going to that type of public school where you just got exposed to everything, all these different ways of thinking. I think it led us to where we are, right? Like just like the way we think, just like this kind of generalist approach to just being interested and curious about different questions, different topics. Just I think that's what, for me, I could definitely say that that's what created that curiosity about, ooh, what's this person like? What's their culture like? And then you go to their house and then you meet their parents, you eat their food, and you're just like, completely different thing.
Yeah, and your background becomes like a neat fact about you, right? It's just nice.
Absolutely. And one of the obvious consequences of homeschooling is you just spend so much more time with your parents. And then I don't want to call it brainwashing, but there's quite a bit of an intense bubble that's formed. And how much time is healthy? Where's that danger zone, and where's the line to really avoid it? Okay. That's that one. Anything else on that?
No, that's it. Let's go on.
You're good? Okay. Ready for number 3? Okay. So number 3, completely separate from the first two. I asked you this in a previous episode, and you said you haven't noticed it. But one of the things that I noticed, at least in my job, is people entering online meetings disguised as avatars. What an insane change in culture and in society, and just how we approach how we see ourselves, right? I think people dressed as avatars are going to, not dressed as, but like You click a filter on something like Zoom or Google Meet, and it just changes your entire look. I think that is just so connected and so born as a result of people being locked down
Yeah.
at home and not interacting with people face to face. And then you layer on top of that, like even now we're recording and I just see myself in the corner.
Uh-huh.
Never when in history when we used to engage with each other face to face in the
You see
office,
yourself.
do you see yourself? Like
No,
imagine
no, no.
constantly,
Yeah.
constantly having a mirror in front of yourself, how self-conscious you become. And
Right,
so
right,
I
right.
think that that makes a lot of people nervous. It makes them very self-conscious. And as a result, they almost want to hide behind a shield. And that
Hmm.
shield becomes avatars. And then the reason I also think is going to continue to rise in popularity as just like an option that you tap when you enter these online meetings
Hmm.
is things like metaverse, right? Like that's ultimately where we're going. It's you can if you play Fortnite, you can buy any skin. You don't have to look like yourself. If you're not
Right, right,
happy
right.
with how you look, you're going to get this other face, this other
Yeah.
skin, this other outfit. And if it makes you feel good, I'm all for that. But ultimately, I think there's some damage that's being done.
Yeah,
But I'd love your take on it.
it's an interesting topic because I personally haven't experienced it. I haven't experienced it. We do it for fun. Like I've been in meetings where we do it. We're like, oh look at this one, ha ha ha, and then we take it off. But like, picture this: like you go on, you go on your Zoom call instead of your boss like unkept hairline, you're gonna stare at like a talking cat detective or like a disco dancing robot, and you're like, how could you take that? I'm not. Maybe it's a joke for us because it's like it sounds crazy, it sounds wild, right? But for introverts, it might be like I think you'd mentioned this, right? Like social anxiety melts away. If you're like a
Field.
pixelated dragon, yeah, it's a shield. Uh, your
But you don't know,
product.
but you don't always have to be so cartoonish, right? I don't want to get
That's
stuck
true.
in that point because you can, like in the metaverse, right? Like whenever Mark Zuckerberg, he shows himself
It's
as an
himself, yeah.
avatar, he still has the brown hair. It still sort of looks like him, but it's not his face, right? Like you can get rid of the blemishes, you can perfect your smile, like any of those things. I think
Right.
in a realistic, like what you're describing is like a boardroom, right? Like
Right.
I think there's a range. But prior to the boardroom, like if you're just presenting something,
Yeah.
yeah, you look like yourself, but
Maybe just
enhanced.
right, right, right. You're right. You're right. I mean, that's a
It's
great
like it's
point.
like makeup. It's modern day
Makeup,
makeup.
digital makeup. Yeah, filter, like an Instagram filter, for sure, for sure. But I mean, people who take that to a step further, it's like, yeah, your true self is gonna get buried, in layers and layers of pixels. And then, what about discrimination? Like, we talk about or discrimination as humans, right? Like now, like oh, by color, opinions, political perspectives. But dude, will we judge people based on their pixelated book cover? This, look at this guy. Why is he a dragon? Like I know that, again it's cartoony, but why is this person a dragon or a lion? What a goofball! Like why is he in this meeting that way? Or will it be like I don't know. Yeah, I just feel like there'll be some different level of discrimination because I think maybe that's just I just think that's just the way we are. Like it's either we're judging them for using it or we're judging their selection of what they're using, their online makeup, their filter choices. Like why would he oh look, he's got like a Game of Thrones helmet. What a nerd. Like those type of things. Um but yeah, I mean, as long as there's a clear boundary about what's professional and personal use, again, that's subjective. But if we can define that, I think it could work. I mean, I'm all for experimentation. If people want to try it, if what would be cool. Sorry, it's kind of tied to it, but if built into that avatar as well, was we can destroy. I don't know why this thought popped in my mind right now. Language barriers going away as well. So not only do you wear a mask or like an avatar, but you also you can translate naturally what you're speaking. So if you speak two different languages, you can take a meeting with like India, and they can speak Hindi and you can speak English, and it'll just smoothly, seamlessly translate. That would be cool. But again, that's the reason I brought that up because it's still like webcam magic that can happen.
Hmm.
So yeah,
I fully agree with you. That in itself should be a separate episode.
for sure.
But because one of the beautiful things that we're kind of seeing is like with Google making it so easy to just translate on the fly. Like right now, the basic is, okay, you have an article, an international article, you can just click translate, and it'll do, a decent job translating it.
Yep.
But when you're traveling to different countries, you can hand your phone, and it'll just translate what the person is speaking. They speak into it, and you see exactly what it says. It opens things up to people who use sign language, right? Like deaf and hard of hearing.
Big one.
All of these accessibility things. What I'm really interested in is, what is the future of commerce when we start exchanging products and exchanging sales and having conversations with people in China, in India, in Japan, in Indonesia, and you don't really have that barrier, right? Like, just what is that exposure to other cultures and people's way of life? What is that going to do to our psyche? Will it make us better? I can't imagine it'll make us worse.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like really, really cool things as a result of this, but kind of reeling it back in, you do see some of this, like some of these consequences of people putting up this digital shield in real life. I was driving around yesterday morning, and there are just people walking around like 9 a.m. in sunny California with hoodies on, just like, or just like shielding their face, getting coffee, like not wanting to be seen by the world. Or New York City, you've been seeing this for a long time, people just staring into their phones, not making no eye contact, right? Like, I think all of those things are just going to continue to rise. That's not a good thing.
No, that's not. But here's a question for you that kind of crossed my mind, and it ties to the language one, and it ties to the masking. How do you feel about masking voice?
Give me more.
Different tone of voice. It's not me. Instead, you hear a deep voice like this. You know what I mean? Or it's just the same way. Like, I can make my voice whatever I want it to be. I masked my voice. I think the Xbox had this actually. The Xbox 360. And I think it was for, I don't know why they made this feature. Maybe it was for kids, to not sound like little kids, or like hide the fact that they're kids. But this is in the mid 2000s, by the way. It's like 2008, 2009. You could, on your Xbox Live, you could turn on it was like a voice masking, and you would just have a different voice, so nobody can actually tell that you were a kid. How do you feel about that in a professional setting? Is that weird?
In a professional setting, I think anything that is not common today sounds weird, right? By definition, it's abnormal. It's different from the norm today. Right. I think there's some positives. I think there's some negatives. So the positives, let's say you are uncomfortable in your own body. You don't like having the voice that you have. You want to have a deeper voice or a more female sounding voice. Okay, whatever makes you happy. One of the bad things, that like the red flags that are going off in my head, are adults trying, sounding like kids all of a sudden.
Hey.
There's some real, consequences that can happen there with like online bullying and whatnot. So yeah, one of, so I don't know. I think it's like case by case. There's some good and some bad. What you did remind me of, though, is something that I heard the other day. So someone like Discover credit card, one of the things that they sort of pride themselves on, and you can see it in their messaging, is when you call, you're going to get an American-based customer service representative. Mm-hmm. And the reason they do that is because there's quite a few people who are uncomfortable hearing an accent when they call and they get, like India or something like that, just using it as an example. So there's an AI that exists that actually that exists or is being fine-tuned at this point, that will allow customer service representatives in these other countries where it's far cheaper to hire. Let's just use an example. So in India, it costs far less to hire an Indian-speaking customer service representative than it is in America, right? Mm-hmm. Like here, especially with the minimum wage continuing to go up, companies want to go for the cheaper option. Now, what if that cheaper option, you can also filter the voice so that it doesn't have that accent, and so that it sounds like someone from Denver, Colorado, mm-hmm. right? Now you have the cost savings, which the company will obviously gravitate to, and people who would prefer to hear an Americanized voice,
Yep.
that concern is alleviated for them. So
Oof.
that's an example of where it makes sense for business to
That's a
change
great
opinions.
business example, actually. I never really thought of it that way. Um, but that makes absolute sense. I would like to find some more use cases for that, but we can explore that in a different episode.
Awesome. Okay, good on this one.
Yeah, good. Let's do prediction number 4.
All right, two more. What do we have here? Okay, so number 4. This one, unfortunately, I believe will very much come to be.
Oof. Sounds
Not
negative.
a fan of it. It is. I think number 4, deep fakes are going to rise leading up to the election and interfere in the narrative. No doubt. I need to say nothing else about that. I'll give you the stage.
Holy cow. Absolutely. Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't even know how we even protect from that at these days, man. AI creations today are getting even more powerful, convincing audio, video. Have you used, I don't know, things like, I mean, not, I guess GPT doesn't really do this, and neither does Midjourney, but like you can, I've seen so many deep fake videos that look incredibly realistic. Jokes about Biden, Biden's a big one. Celebrities saying funny things, talking like rappers. I mean, it's honestly, you're right. It's a negative one. It's a unfortunately a disastrous one in some ways, man. Misinformation campaigns are a really, really terrifying prospect to feel, especially coming up this election year. I think I will say, to shine a little bit of light, it's good that we are more conscious. Not as a result of this, but we are more aware, I'd say, in the next year, hopefully. I don't think the average Joe will be aware, but I think there will be a larger population that's aware of deepfakes and will question it a little bit more. But I mean, definitely is going to be used to damage reputations, spread hate speech, even, dude, in some ways, maybe manipulate financial markets, getting people to say crazy things to get people to invest, drop money. It's a tool that's it's a dystopian war tool. I would say, even like it's a futuristic. It's just another. It's another. I think it's another. What do we call it? It's another plane of war. We have cybersecurity war. We have physical world war. We have political war, economic war. War. I think this is part of the informational war.
It's
Just
psyops. Yeah.
it's science, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Psychological warfare, without a doubt. And I think it needs to be more. It's spoken about, but I don't think there isn't enough awareness out there for everybody to really be like question everything they see. Like part of the culture that we need to adapt. Knowing this, like your prediction is perfect. I'm glad you actually said it now because it's even a reminder for myself. Like we should go into 2024 knowing that this is going to be a large factor, an increasing trend. And we need to be more in the mindset of robust fact checking initiatives, stricter regulations as well. In some cases, for social media platforms, again, I know people hate me for that when it comes to content, are not going to like that I said that. And education on how we can spot it. Maybe it's building solutions. Maybe it's tools. Maybe it's a solution that maybe we leverage AI to go, hey, here's a link to a YouTube video. It'll scan it and say, yep, this is a deep fake. I don't know what it is, but I think that could be a business idea actually, if it doesn't already exist. Building some sort of deep fake scanner where you take the YouTube link or the video link, you paste it in it, and it scans the video and confirms whether it's a deep fake or not.
Interesting. I would to kind of continue down that that idea for the business. I envision something like a smart key, right? So if you use, yeah, that's interesting. So like a digital signature, right? Whether it's in, I don't know, going back to NFTs, right? Like that's something that could be applicable to this, where let's say a famous celebrity, I don't know, give me a famous celebrity.
Uh, Brad Pitt.
Let's use someone else.
What's wrong with Brad Pitt?
No, Brad Pitt is fine. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's use. Well, I was looking for somebody more influential who would be able to like shift the markets if they spoke. Let's use Biden.
Okay, Biden.
Just as an example. So let's say Biden had a smart key, right? That just like an NFT, you know, he's the only one who possesses it, and you could check and when he posts something, there's a verified like a verified smart
That he
key
used,
thing,
yeah.
and you click on it and you could check the validity of it. Because unlike, let's say, that Twitter blue check mark,
Interesting.
you could just and a lot of people did this, they just made the blue check mark part of their image,
Uh-huh.
and people didn't even bother checking. They're like,
That's
okay, well, yeah, this has a blue check mark, so
that's
people will
crazy.
always game the system. So I think something like a smart key or like a smart contract will inevitably be part of the future, because people will need that kind of verification, especially for something that can move the markets,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Something else you said that was interesting. Yeah, well, can't remember
I'm trying to think.
it. So,
Yeah.
so
I mean,
I
yeah.
remembered. You were saying that people need to go into 24 being more aware and just like skeptical. I don't think that's the society that we have built, right? This is a society, like you saw it even with basic headlines. People were sharing articles on Twitter, on Facebook, all over without even clicking into
Reading.
the article itself
Yeah.
because of the clickbait. And Twitter saw that and they said, "Hey, are you sure you want to share this? We see that you haven't even opened the article." So
Yeah.
that was kind of their attempt to stop to try to per, to,
Stopped out of it.
to like reduce it a little bit, yeah.
Right.
And so I think people are just in a lot of people go into content and anything that they see with a lot of confirmation bias, right? So like if someone is saying something that I support, I'm going to share that to people
Totally.
as a result. I'm not really going to deep dive, put my Sherlock hat uh, on
Question it.
and really question it, and that's dangerous. And people who are malicious and are approaching this from with malicious intent, they know this. That's what they're leveraging, and that's dangerous.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, and I agree. That's not really our society, especially American society, where we ask the question why not versus why. Uh,
Hmm, yeah.
yeah. So, all right. Well, yeah. Let's go to prediction number five. I know we're at 41 minutes.
Are we at 40? Wow, fly breathe through time.
Yeah.
This one I'm still kind of fleshing out, but one of the things that's really coming to the forefront is the death of the third party tracking cookie. I don't know
Totally.
if you
Yeah.
know anything about this.
Oh, a lot. Yeah, it's part of my job. Yeah. So,
Oh, so there you go. Yeah. So okay. So for those who don't know, that let's kind of define it, right? So what is a third party cookie? A third party cookie is sort of the mechanism that enables cross site tracking, right? So like if you are shopping on one website and then you go to a completely different website, I just heard your dog.
Luna. Yeah.
Um, that and then like it's a cookie is something that's embedded in your profile, and all of these advertisers are able to gather that data and then feed you advertisements that truly match your tastes, right, across all of those websites. And just as an example, if you left something in your cart, in your shopping cart on website A, and you go to just like the New York Times and you're reading it, you might see an ad for what you left in your shopping cart because
Hmm.
they're exchanging that data. And one of the really interesting things that we're seeing right now is this really growing concern in data privacy,
Hmm.
right? Oh, for the last like decade plus, people have just voluntarily shared everything about their lives on social media. They've written in blogs and all of that.
Made so
And
much
so
money, by the way.
yeah, so much money that we
Gold
didn't
mine.
get paid for. And so not only is there now a thirst to kind of take back the data that we've released on social media, people also want to get paid for that data. People want to take control of their data, right? They're realizing, like with the rise in deepfakes, that hey, my face is out there and it's being used against me.
Hmm.
So all of these things, and then I'll also add on top of that, GDPR, when it came out, that was the first time that the mass the mass population really had cookies as part of the conversation, right? Cookies were like something technical that most people didn't even bother
Didn't
with.
care. Yeah.
GDPR made it so that anytime you go on a website now, it's you have to accept cookies.
Consent.
So now it's like it's kind of conscious.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm saying that this will really continue to rise as a trend is in
The
early
de-
January,
is it the
Google
de-
is.
I was going to just
Go ahead.
ask: is the death of the third party cookie what you predict in 2024,
I think
or
the
continuing of killing it?
I think the death of it will really start with Google leading the way, right? So,
Yeah.
like if you look up third-party cookies going away on Google, it says the phase out will be gradual and starts from January 4th, 2024, with the disabling third-party cookies for 1% of users to facilitate testing. This is what Google is doing, and they're the world's biggest search engine. So to yeah, anyway, so that's going to start in early January of this year. What are the consequences of that? I think that a lot of merchants are going to realize, hey, we don't have as much advertising data as we used to have. We can't target people in the same way. And once they start seeing that their sales are declining, they're gonna, what are they gonna do, right? That's the question. And so obviously, this is a technical topic, but like first party cookies are still going to exist, right? So like if I go on your website as a retailer, you can still track me, you can learn about my engagement with your website. But once I leave, you don't know anything about me. Or if I come from another website, you can't leverage that. And so I think one of the major changes will be to marketing, right? It'll be less of a we know everything about you to a, hey, we'd like to get to know you better. Can we ask you some questions in this survey? And I think that's going to be a much more interesting of an exchange. And in a way, there's some benefits, right? In a way, advertising could be much more personalized because I'm voluntarily telling you things about myself. I'm telling you what my tastes are, so you can feed me better.
Yeah.
What do you think? Am I off on anything here?
Yeah, no, totally. I actually think this has already started, but yeah, I think it'll just continue, and I think it'll be much more apparent in 2024. I'm trying to think, like, it's funny, like you're absolutely true. What you're saying is like, how do we get to know? Everybody's gonna, advertisers specifically, marketers are gonna lean in first party data that they own. So we'll see. I think we'll see, obviously hits to marketing budgets in some cases, right? Banner advertising is basically dead almost. I think people, yeah, you're right. We're gonna get what's called some places call it zero party data. Get information directly from like Matt. But what's interesting? Every time I feel like I'm hit with that, I never want to respond to those things. That's just a personal level of response. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It works probably very well, and I think it actually works really well. But like, I don't know. Do you answer those surveys when you go to like a retailer or like you're shopping around and you're going to like a comp? Just curious.
I do, and I'm sure like most people do. I do it if there's an incentive, right? You're gonna give me 10% off, or you're gonna mail me something, and I think we're gonna start seeing more of that fair exchange, right? You don't just know things about me because you stole that information from. I use stole loosely, but you stole that information from another retailer. You actually asked me for it. I volunteered this information. It's much more of a like the same way it happens in the physical world.
Totally, 100%. And as a matter of fact, I was going to say, I totally think so, and I don't think everybody's going to execute correctly on that. And I think it's really important that they do for the sake of their business. Otherwise, what we're going to see in this transition that you're talking about to the first party data is a bunch of businesses struggle, and actually some of them die off. That sounds like very post-apocalyptic, but like I think some companies are just not they're not technically savvy or aware, or are just not nimble enough to make the changes. And I'm not talking about big businesses. I'm just talking about more like mid-sized to small businesses that just they're just not going to have the online advertising power at all. Either they're going to have to be rebuilt from scratch. They don't really see the importance of collecting first party data and getting to know their customers. It's just been status quo. It's been, hell, let's lean on third party banner advertisement. Let's just what is it, like spray and pray to like whoever's out there, whatever comes, that'll be part of my business. And I think we'll see businesses needing to be, I think the real takeaway is that businesses need to further adapt on their digital strategies into 2024 and beyond. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot of businesses fall apart, smaller businesses. Just because they're not bothering to really get to know their customer. And like to your point, I think that's what the key of online digital business is going to be, is knowing your customers. If you don't know them, you're going to be a loser in the long run.
And you got to build trust, right? You got to build trust. It's hard work, but that's what you have to do. We have to. there has to be a fair exchange, right? For our people are coming to the real fact, and rightfully so, that our data is worth a lot of money.
Yep.
What we like, what our fears are, what motivates us, what our goals are, those are very important parts
Super.
of our lives. And if you're going to sell things to us, do it in a fair, balanced way where
Yeah.
both parties benefit. It's not just you are taking my data, and you're reselling it
Yeah.
to other parties, and you're making money off of it as a giant company,
Yep.
and customers don't get any of that benefit.
Yes. 100%. One thing that we will see also as part of that, I mean, that's a great point. Um, that I forgot that I was going to mention was there's also another strategy that this is creating, and it's called the creation. Again, not to get too technical, but it's for those who are watching, but the creation of clean rooms. So essentially, this will allow different retailers and different or different whatever service or goods you provide to share your data with others. So it's almost like a safe way to share data. So agencies, for example, are going to do this, where you have this middle secure place where if I am Blockbuster and you're a Blockbuster, terrible example. If I don't know why I was thinking about Blockbuster, but let's say I'm Netflix and you are AMC, or you're a supermarket. Let's use Whole Foods instead. I have a portion of my customers. I have data about them. You have a portion. We have a portion of overlapping customers. We can dump together into this clean room our data. It'll be encrypted, so you don't. It's not like I'm sharing Max's phone number. Max is both a customer of Netflix and Whole Foods, but I can share with Whole Foods if there's a match in the clean room without sharing his email or his name, whether Max really likes scary movies or if he likes to watch movies on Friday night. How would that be helpful for somebody like Whole Foods? Is because perhaps if he likes to watch Friday night movies, when Max goes to shop at Whole Foods, we can sell him popcorn. Exactly. So those type of strategies start to appear. Again, that's just going a little too granular, but that's something that you'll see a lot more of those handshakes between different retailers for sharing data. But you know what that creates? It creates kind of a clique.
Yeah.
So that means the big boys have the data and the small boys or girls.
But there's still I agree with you. The big players are still going to be, they're still going to be on top. Like that's the nature of being a big player. But there's going to be a little bit of a redistribution, right?
Totally,
and
totally.
and for the first time, the customer is actually involved, right? There's this
A lot more
whole
power.
there's this whole push for know your customer, but know them in an ethical way.
Yeah.
And that's that I think is one of the major benefits of this. And I'm really, people didn't realize this when GDPR was first coming about, but man, it led to a lot of things. And in Europe, this was in the forefront,
California's
way
doing it.
before the US. Yeah, absolutely.
California's doing it. The only thing I was going to say about that, there's like one more thing. Damn it. I hope I don't lose it. It was, I think I'm going to lose it. Yeah.
Bring it back.
Okay, give me like 2 seconds. I'm trying to think back. It was when you said GDPR, California, redistribution. Oh yeah, there's a browser, by the way. Do you know about it? That pays you.
Go ahead.
I think it pays you for providing your data as well. I forget the name of the browser. I don't know if it's actually successful, but it's basically playing on the idea that your data is valuable, and I think that would be like a great educational message to send to people as a whole, is that your data is super valuable to these companies. People pay, every company trying to get you as a customer, you have an acquisition cost. You cost money to become a customer. And with data, we remove that cost because we can be smarter about how we can target you. So it might not be great for the great marketers of the world or the big companies that want to exploit that, but I think it's some real education that everybody can use to help navigate and understand the value of their personal information.
Totally true. And people don't know their own value, right? You don't know how to value your own data, right? Like what am I worth, right? Like what is my browsing experience on my phone worth? What is it worth on the desktop? Obviously very drastic experiences.
Yeah.
So very interesting. All right, I think we're going to wrap it there. So let's just recap it. So 5 predictions for 2024. We're just going to do a very high level. So number 1, in no particular order, People completing online certificates and proudly posting about them on platforms like LinkedIn will continue to rise,
Cool.
maybe
I'm
even
thrilled
really
to.
take off. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Another related one to that, homeschooling will continue to rise. Number three, people entering online meetings disguised as avatars will only continue to increase. I cannot wait for you to actually experience this in your first meeting so that you know exactly
Judgmental
what I'm
already.
talking
I'm
about.
judgmental already. I'm like,
Number four, deep fakes. Little doubt that this is going to come to fruition. Deep fakes are going to continue to rise leading up to the election and interfere in the narrative. And number five, the death of the third party cookie.
yep.
That's it. Those are the five predictions. We'll check in next December in
Yes, see which one came
2024
true.
to see how we're doing. I'm sure most of these we're just gonna we're gonna touch on them throughout the year because you're just gonna
Yeah.
start seeing like little blips here and there. Um, Very excited for some of
Yeah.
these. Kind of nervous about the rest of them, but
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
things progress, things change. There's going to be some interesting businesses, some interesting opportunities that kind of present themselves as a result
Yeah.
of these trends. Um,
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
and I was going to add here's just the last quick tidbits of additional predictions, really quickly. We don't have to get into these; they're not the five main ones, but just ones that I want to hit you guys with. Obviously, AI boom is going to continue. We're going to see that it's breakthroughs in personalized healthcare, in education tied to our homeschooling. Uh, Obviously, in cars and cybersecurity, renewable energy is going to accelerate as well. Obviously, there's been some backlash with oil kind of getting some more momentum, but I think we're going to continue to see more solar and wind get picked up by governments. Political tensions will continue to persist. I know you hear about them all the time. That will be part of our life, unfortunately, in 2024.
Sorry to interrupt for 1 second, but I think one of the interesting things that we're going to see, maybe not next year, maybe in the next 5, 10 years, to your point about solar and wind, I think nuclear is going
Nuclear,
to
yes.
start getting explored. It's going to start. There's going to be a big push to make people more comfortable. Obviously, the things that's in the back of a lot of our minds is the 5 Mile Island or 3 Mile Island, whatever that one was.
Mm-hmm.
That one hit close to home. The one in Ukraine obviously is very memorable. But there's so much opportunity and so much potential in both nuclear, fusion, fission, whichever one.
Yeah. A lot of breakthroughs too.
A lot of breakthroughs, and it's just at this point it just becomes like a PR exercise, right? You just have to rewrite the narrative and get people more comfortable with it, and move away from fossil fuels.
100%. Yeah. And then the last two is going to say economic slight recovery, maybe
Sure,
that's wishful thinking. I think slight recovery. Slight, again, this could be the key word. I don't see it like spiking or anything like that, but slight recovery. And then the metaverse, not in the sense of Facebook, but in the sense of like what we think of virtual worlds and gaming and stuff like that will continue to grow, and that'll be our kids' world. And yeah, that's it. Those are the quick tidbits, and we'll cut it out. This has been.
We'll see you in 2024.
We'll see you in the future. Yeah. Bye.
Nah.